You're a reader in the 1960s. You pick up a book, expecting a fun adventure or a gentle life lesson about kindness. But instead, the story is about racism or poverty or the reality of war. Maybe the main character doesn't win at the end. Maybe they don't even survive. Something happened in the mid-20th century. Children's books stopped pretending the world was simple. Hey everyone, I'm Nick, and this is DrCrankyPantsReads, and today we're talking about the 1960s and 70s, when children's books stopped being just stories and started tackling reality. This was the era when authors looked around and said, you know what? Kids see what's happening in the world, and maybe we should stop sugarcoating it. And just like that, children's literature got real. So what changed? A lot, it turns out. The 60s and 70s were a massive period of social and cultural upheaval. The civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement, the Vietnam War. Kids weren't growing up in some sanitized bubble. They were seeing protests, hearing political debates, and experiencing injustice firsthand. It only made sense that their books started reflecting that too. This is when we start seeing books that dealt with racism, class struggles, and social injustice. Books like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor, which follows a Black family in 1930s Mississippi as they fight against racism to keep their land. Or Sounder by William H. Armstrong, which tells the story of a young Black boy whose father is arrested for stealing food to feed his family. These were fairy tales. They weren't meant to comfort. They were meant to teach and sometimes to unsettle. And then there were books that explored identity, especially the complex, messy, not always pretty reality of childhood. Enter Harriet the Spy by Louise Fitzhugh. Harriet was nosy. She was sneaky. She wrote mean things about people in her notebook. She was complicated. And before this, most kid protagonists were either good or bad. But they weren't messy. Harriet, though, she was real. This was also the time when books started tackling teenage rebellion. Think The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, a book that was literally written by a teenager, and upon its publication in 1967, started the whole YA book genre. The Outsiders told the story of working class boys just trying to survive. It wasn't polished, it wasn't idealized, it was pretty gritty, and teens loved it. So what else changed? For one, the idea of who gets to be a hero. Before this, most books still focused on middle-class white kids. But by the 60s and 70s, that was shifting. We started getting Black protagonists, working-class protagonists, kids who weren't just a carbon copy of the old-school all-American hero. Books started reflecting real diversity, not just in skin color, but in experience. Writing styles changed too. Books became bolder, more experimental, more fragmented. Some of them didn't tell you what to think. They just handed you a situation and let you sit with it. Stories didn't always have happy endings. Sometimes they ended with questions instead of answers. And of course, the 70s is when we started seeing books directly challenge authority. The 60s and 70s were all about questioning the system, and that spilled into children's literature too. Suddenly, kids weren't just reading stories where they listened to adults, they were reading stories where they pushed back against them. This is also the period where books started being banned more often. Books like Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume, which openly discussed puberty and religion. Or Julie of the Woods by Jean Craighead George, which dealt with issues of survival, abuse, and cultural identity. These books got people talking, sometimes even arguing, because they weren't just safe stories, they were conversations. So let's recap. By the 60s and 70s, books began tackling real issues, racism, poverty, injustice, and identity. We also started to see books where the heroes weren't perfect. They were complicated, messy, and above all, real. Diverse voices also started to appear, bringing in perspectives that hadn't been centered before, and writing styles got bolder and more experimental. Additionally, stories stopped handing kids easy answers. Sometimes they just asked questions. This era completely changed what children's literature could be. Suddenly, books weren't just about escaping reality. They were about understanding it. Now, I want to hear from you. What's a book you read as a kid that felt real? Something that didn't shy away from tough topics? Do you think children's books today still challenge authority in the same way? Or have they shifted again? Next time, we're looking at the now, how children's literature has exploded into one of the most diverse and dynamic fields in publishing today. I'll see you then.